Our next speaker is Dr. Eric Schmidt. So, Eric, would you please take the stage?
Thank you. Thank you, George. It's great to be here. Thank you all for coming. It's always a little amazing to me that I get a chance to follow a person who is really my hero. Everything that you see around you, I would say, in many cases, your jobs, certainly my job, descended from the vision of one person and a team he assembled, and that's Vint Cerf. When you look around and you see this campus, you see Vint. And that's why he's so interesting to talk to. I wanted to talk just briefly about a couple of things, and then I think it's better to do Q&A. It's after lunch, and I hope you enjoyed our lunch. And I would tell you that I think it's now become clear that we're not at the end of something, but we're in fact at the beginning of a massive transition to cloud computing. And when you looked at the presentations today and you heard some of the ideas and you've seen the business success we've had, it's important to understand that this is in the context of a global transition from one form of computing to a different, a global transition of one form of information sharing to another. Part of the reason that Google is such an exciting place to be right now, and I hope you agree, is that we can now actually see an integrated strategy for the company. Google, of course, as a company is run very much bottoms up, which is part of our success. But let me give you a sense of how powerful this new model really behaves. We define our strategy as search, ads, and apps. And anybody think that search is a solved problem? I certainly do not. Let me give you an example of one of the conversations that we have all the time. People here, we have experts in the room and on our video conference. You're knowledge experts. You spend a lot of time in Google. You say, well, that's a good answer, that's a bad answer, that's wrong, he's right, she's correct, and you unify it and you'll publish something or you'll think something or so forth. We have no way of capturing your expert insights immediately back into search. A very interesting observation. How could we, and not a solved problem yet, how could we take the knowledge that is in this enormous number of people who use Google every day and make Google even better from the standpoint of search? If you think about it, a variant of that, a way to say it, is that search is only as good as the content. So it makes sense for us to do everything that we possibly can to get higher quality content. Not necessarily more content, because it's easy for computers to generate spam all day, and they're very good at it. But the kind of insightful thing that we're now beginning to see all over the web, thinking of Wikipedia and other examples, over and over again, we find that the search result is really the same thing as the quality of the content, because we rank it very, very well. Very interesting. Now, in a company where search is obviously the view that we have of the world, it's easy to say, well, it's a hammer-nail problem and that everything is a search problem. But I can give you example after example where search is, in fact, the defining answer. We have a product called Google Docs, which I'll talk about in a minute. And people with Google Docs, instead of using their list of files and they say, delete this file and keep this file and so forth, they just leave everything there and they just search. Seems like kind of a trivial example, except you can't do that with any other system. Look at the success of Gmail. Again, why is Gmail successful? There are many reasons. But it turns out that one of them is that people don't delete all their email. They leave all their email because they get so much of it, and they want to refer to it, and they can't quite remember. So if they have really good search, boom, they get the right answer. So whether it's desktop search or enterprise search or global search or specialized content search, the search problem is both powerful, fundamental, and not completely solved yet. In the app side of our strategy, the ad side of our strategy, advertising has actual value. And all of us grew up in a model where advertising was something that you largely had to suffer through. You'd turn the page or wait for get up from the sofa while the ad was on television. But there's a different model that has been so successful for us, that ads have value in and of themselves. Google is today showing fewer ads with better monetization than our competitors, and in many cases than in any part of the industry. And that's because we use information that we glean from the computers and the algorithms that we've developed to provide extremely targeted ads. A well-targeted ad is a much more valuable ad. Now, everything we know tells us that that model should work in every market where you can do targeting. So today, for example, we talk about our Nielsen deal today, which is just one of the many deals that have been happening over the last little while as we expand this mission, obviously DoubleClick and so forth and so on. But in each case, we believe that the value to the end user is in a targeted ad. Now you say, well, I don't really want any ads at all. But in fact, often you do, because a well-targeted ad is actually quite useful, especially if you're about to buy something. But it has to be the right ad. So in our expansion, which of course is deeper in the sense of much higher quality, broader in the sense of many more markets and applications types, and then global, as in touching many, many different kinds of markets, the same principle, the same approach is applied every time. And we've, of course, extended this with things like gadget ads and video ads and so forth and so on. But the principle of targeting is the underlying principle, and we're not done with that by far. So not only are we not done on the search side, we're not done on the ad side for the reasons that I said. In the application side, let me tell you the story of calendar. Now, a few years ago, if you'd come up to me and said, wow, I've got a really exciting thing about a calendar, I'd say, like, what problem do you have, right? Calendars were exciting about 500 years ago when the Gregorian calendar was invented, right? And that's the last exciting calendar event. Wrong. I was wrong again. It turns out calendars, it's a simple metaphor, but what do you do with calendars? You compare them with your friends' calendars or your colleagues' calendars or your family calendars. I know this seems trivial. I know this doesn't seem very insightful, but in fact it's fundamental because it's the first example of why the new paradigm is so fundamentally different from everything that we've grown up with. So the fact that all of our calendars are interlinked through a natural sharing mechanism makes them so much more functional, makes it viral, makes it powerful, and makes it simple. Google Docs, our word processing and spreadsheet, everybody always spends their time comparing it to the market leader. We're not trying to solve that problem. We're trying to solve a different problem. The problem we're trying to solve is that we're all collaborating. So at Google today, we use all of these tools internally, and we're constantly changing and editing everybody else's data. And it's just like that. We don't send email messages to each other and say, what do you think? We just edit it. And this person changes it, and this person changes it, and we have records and so forth and knowing who does it. So all of a sudden, you have two interesting examples of the paradigm. Let me give you another example. Most of the people that I know and talk with who run small businesses would fundamentally prefer to throw out all of their current infrastructure and use our enterprise products. And I go like, wow, that's a pretty big change at your age. Didn't we all grow up with this old model? And they say, you don't understand, Eric. It's actually possible now for a small business to completely outsource everything. To you, by the way, which is why they're telling me this, for $50 a year. Now, how big can that get? Looks like it can get pretty big. We've got very significant organizations now believing this and trying it. Why do they do it? Well, obviously price, obviously complexity. But there's one other reason. Their users prefer the model. Their users want the sharing. They want this extensibility. So here you have search, not yet done, apps, not yet done, and then you see that in the and in the app side, very much not done. That we're just at the beginning, and as some of the questions that Vince just got showed, you all are thinking very carefully now about what does it mean to have everyone on these networks with interoperable gadgets in a sharing matrix or a social network, however you want to call it, where they can begin to interact. The sum of all of that, plus the approaches that we're taking with respect to access and mobile, which you know about, comprise a strategy that should drive Google very, very far. Because it's a coherent strategy that actually solves real problems that end users have. And what's so exciting about it now is that we used to just talk about it, but now we've got the customers, the teams, and the products not just shipping now, but we've got the second version and the third version, and they're coming out quickly. And they come out quickly because the new programming paradigm, which I haven't even really talked about, of web services, makes the world a quicker place. Boom, 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 product, service, so forth. The sum of all of this means that instead of having a static release cycle, a product which ships in November and then you wait a year and you test it to death and so forth, it's more of an experience. And the experience is constantly changing, learning, getting better, and all of that. That sets up tremendous innovation from a Google perspective and something that we're very, very proud of. So with that, what I thought I would do is rather than keep talking about all of this, invite Sergey and George to join me and get your questions and comments on any of this, any of the things that I've said, or anything else you've seen today. So thank you very much. Now, and go ahead.
Thank you.
Who would like to ask the first question?
Trip Chaudhary with Global Equities Research. Two quick questions. First is on the mapping software. The industry has got consolidated. Navteq, TeleAtlas have been the building blocks for map applications. All Yahoo's MapQuest differentiate themselves on the routing algorithm and the presentation part. We are hearing that since the consolidation has occurred, they may be charging more to website producers, including Google. Any thoughts on that? And secondly, how do you resolve the conflict, the partner conflict, say, in Google Apps, especially Google Apps versus Zoho? And how do you see partners also playing in your ecosystem? Thank you.
Do you want to do the maps? You want me to do it?
Briefly on the maps, so I don't know that either of those two acquisitions have yet closed, so we certainly don't know yet what effect that may have on pricing. But that's a pretty small component of what our maps do, and that's it's an important piece. But we have so many other pieces, and we have also even other vendors beyond those two for road data, though perhaps not in the major geographies. We have all of the satellite data that we have. We have the aerial views. We have 3D model data, the street level views that were recently introduced. So our geographic products encompass a whole range of things. So I'm not, we're not too focused on one particular segment. Though obviously we'd be disappointed if they, tried to charge more as a result of these M&A activities.
On the apps question and potential conflict, Google, of course, has many products that we offer to many partners. So, for example, we have search products that we offer to search companies. We also have advertising products that we offer to search companies that then compete with us on search but use our advertising to monetize. We're very comfortable with that model, and it makes a lot of sense to us. It gives us broader reach, gives us greater standardization of tools. We think it benefits end users. And, of course, the partner is making a free and willing choice to partner with us. In the application space, it makes sense that there would be embedded, for example, app strategies that would emerge over time. We would want to do that even if the application was somewhat competitive in this space. Before we worry too much about the competitors in this space, it's important to understand how large and open the space really is. This platform that I talked about has created such a large new space. It's as large as the creation of the PC industry. It's as large as the early internet in terms of its opportunity. And so it's not possible today to know which particular applications approach, or even if any set of them will really emerge, because it's so new and changing so quickly. So I would not worry too much about competition. I would worry more about speed, because for the company that you named, there are 5 other companies that are also trying similar ideas, and one of them is going to hit it, and they're going to hit it big, and that's exciting for all of us. Go ahead.
Sandeep Agarwal from Oppenheimer. Couple of questions on Google Apps. Eric, do you think you can reach maybe 5 to 7% penetration in the small and medium business segment? I think one of the product managers earlier mentioned there are 25 million small and medium businesses in US. We think it's probably 65 million on a worldwide basis. Do you think you can reach maybe 3 million of them in 2 years' time? the growth you are seeing for the adoption of these Google apps, is it coming on the expense of some existing PC-based office productivity tools, or are you also seeing someone adopting the world of computing first time, which is online? And third is, what kind of attach rate are you seeing for a premium subscription of someone willing to pay $50 per year per end user? And lastly, what kind of maybe challenges you think you have in terms of maybe accelerating the adoption of this new offerings? Thank you.
So give us the subject of the 4 questions you asked. The first question was? The penetration. What kind of penetration do you see? It's very dangerous for us to estimate a particular penetration rate by a particular time. I can tell you the variables that will drive that have a lot to do with their internet adoption rate. A lot of small and medium businesses are still not fundamentally using the internet in a special way. This is why, for example, the Yellow Pages continues to be a primary source of advertising for them. To the degree that we can get those small and medium businesses onto the internet, we believe we have the best tools to allow them to both publish their information but also monetize and advertise their products. And we have under development various tools to make that even easier. But the question that you asked is really a question about penetration rate of the internet as a whole in that segment, which is difficult for us to estimate. Your second question?
It was about the growth rate. Are you seeing because people are switching from existing PC-based office productivity tools, or do you also adding people a new install base?
It's difficult to know. We know that our presence in the market has affected pricing. We don't know how much they're switching versus new uses.
And third was, sorry, two more questions. About the premium subscription, what kind of attach rate are you seeing people signing up for the premium subscription versus the free subscription?
We don't actually break it out, but it's growing quite significantly.
And lastly, do you see any 2-3 low-hanging fruits in terms of increasing the adoption of this product? Thank you.
We're doing it very quickly. The primary issues in adoption on the app side have to do with the fact that people actually have to learn about it, and they have to actually convert their operating model, the way their infrastructure works, to use this new service. It's very easy for brand new entities. It's harder for existing entities. More questions?
Hi, Justin Post from Merrill Lynch. Google has better visibility than probably any company in the world into what people are doing online, and you seem very well positioned in search and video. But on the social networking side, probably a lot of traffic away from Google's websites. What kind of products can you build to really capitalize on that? And do you see that as a long-term threat to the company?
Well, first I'd like to highlight that we have a very successful social network product, which is Orkut, which is among the leading social networks. It's not as well known here in the U.S. because its primary usage are in countries such as Brazil and India, but it's very, very successful there. But we don't feel at a higher level that we need to own everything successful on the internet. We're very happy to partner with those companies, let them flourish, and let them contribute great content that we can then search over. For example, we have a great relationship with MySpace, which is, I guess, the number one in the U.S. And we're very happy with that. And we probably partner now with on the order of 20 or so social networks. The MySpace is probably the largest one, but there are many, many others that we're partnering, generating revenue for, and hope to continue to collaborate with for a long time.
Okay, our next question.
Yeah, 2 questions. I'll stack them. So the first one is, in terms of, in this morning session, David mentioned that your advertisers are very happy with the product, and one of the things they really want is just more clicks. Or more paid leads. So through this last quarter, it was 45% growth in paid leads, and it was a bit more in the first half. Mm-hmm. In terms of the drivers of that, you could break it down in terms of queries and paid leads per query. How have those trended year to date and contributed to the overall paid lead growth number?
I'm a little confused. By paid leads, you're actually referring to...
Yeah, year-over-year growth last quarter was 45%.
Of
Part of that's going to be improved relevancy.
Yeah, it's really a complex mathematical question, which means Sergey should answer it.
No, I mean, I'll basically say the same thing, because we look at our... we obviously have a lot more data than you guys do about it. But we look and we have long, complex meetings about it to see why, click-through rates might have gone up or down, and why sort of RPMs might have gone up or down or something like that. And it turns out there's so many complex factors that go into something like that. Things like simple as obviously geographic mix. Things as, how many new advertisers we have versus the old ones that are carrying over. Factors such as, their sort of how people control their budget limits. There are obviously user interfaces that on the Google sites, we control the user interfaces within our network. Our partners may change the user interface from time to time. And we have our own sets of seasonalities, as do our partners, which are sometimes inverted. So I don't have a straightforward answer for you right now, other than to tell you that when we sit down and dig deep into these questions at meetings, it actually takes, a good half hour, 1 hour to go through the explanation for any particular change. And it's not trivial things.
We actually view it as a physics problem. The physics of a particular click. Why did that particular click occur? And then we back solve it using literally physics algorithms.
Right. And then the second question was at the last Analyst Day, if I recall, one of the metrics that you were managing to was revenue per employee. Is that still a metric that you are looking to manage to going forward?
It's certainly one thing that we look at. We mostly like to make money. Mm-hmm. And, this is a for-profit business. And so we primarily look at absolute profitability growth. And if you start looking at any particular metric, you can get confused. For example, we've been able to expand our support services in India very successfully at a much lower cost per head. Clearly, we should do that, even though the revenue per head count is affected by that. But the primary goal of the company is to make money. And that's what we look at.
Ben Schachter, UBS. Google seems to be getting more vocal about the opportunities in the television market. I was wondering what you bring to the table in terms of better targeting those ads, and does it make sense for you to control or own the set-top box? And then the separate question on, can you give us an update on the closing of DoubleClick? In the past, you've said that should close by the end of 2007. Thanks.
Television?
I own a set-top box too, in fact.
You bought a television.
At home. Yes.
Sergey actually bought a television.
Technically, it's rented to me from the cable company. I think, look, the advertising that we are able to do on television is much more like internet advertising than what traditionally broadcasters have been used to. And so we bring to it, first of all, a base of advertisers who are really interested in measurable advertising. They want to know, things as basic as, well, how many impressions do they have, fairly precisely, not kind of a statistical guess. They want to know what time they happened. They want to be able to synchronize that to events such as, website traffic and things like that. And we're able to do all of that. And the fact that we have these great partners that are able to code their set-top boxes to have all this kind of reporting is a great benefit to us. I don't think that we particularly need to own the set-top boxes. We just need to have partners who are open and motivated to work with us to make them work well. And generally, they are very motivated because this is just extra revenue for them, which they're all happy to have.
And on the DoubleClick question, there are many, many legal hurdles that are imposed on us by virtue of our position and their position globally, not just in the U.S. And we worked hard to meet all of those. And I think we're in good shape with respect to working with everybody and so forth. We don't control the timing. It's possible that it could actually be approved and be done before the end of the year. It's possible that it could take a little bit longer. Mm-hmm. But I think we've done a good job of working with everybody, and we're obviously very, very hopeful that it will be approved. Yes, ma'am.
Hi. Two-part question, but it's really about openness. First, on the advertising side, will you be open to third-party ad feeds a la Atlas, Microsoft in this case, into your ad networks, or do you prefer to keep a closed ad network system? And then the second question on openness is really around, there's been all this effusing on Facebook. Obviously, we've all seen the announcement today. part of the success is been gotten through the openness of the application network, and being able to, get this developer base really, innovating for the company. And so just, where are you in terms of open, ad networks as well as open developer networks such that you can, harness those developers out there? Thanks.
Well, as you know, one of the characteristics of DoubleClick is it's a multi-network solution. So DoubleClick is an example of that. And we're very much in favor of these networks coming together. On the application side, one of the consequences of this applications development model is that the people develop code for more than one platform, more than one environment, and we think that's very healthy. We don't like it when information that we think end users would like is not available to them because people won't let us get it and give it to people. So anything that people can do to get the networks that are being built to be more open, more shareable, more capable of running other people's applications, we're in favor of that. And to the degree that we can, we'll make our technologies available on their networks as well.
Eric, increasingly display advertising is a strategic imperative for Google, given it allows you to reach more advertisers, gain more information, propagate the virtuous cycle. And if I look analytically at the progress you've made over the last 18 months in display advertising, I can't really see a meaningful progress. And so I was wondering if you could point to either qualitatively or quantitatively the progress you've made on display advertising. And if you think about the next 12 to 18 months, where do you think you'll be on that front? And when do you start to worry about an inability to get there because of some structural issue?
Well, again, by display advertising, I think you're talking fundamentally about DoubleClick. And the reason that we entered into the agreement to purchase DoubleClick is that we thought that they could significantly advance what we view as a completely new business for Google. Our customers tell us that they want that product and that they want the kind of technology that is implied by that and the technology that we can bring to bear that would make the ads more relevant, more scalable, more networked, et cetera, et cetera. So the answer to your question is really a function of whether we're able to get the acquisition approved, which obviously we want to.
Hey, Eric, Bob Peck. Previously, a year and a half ago, you gave us some guidance for Google. You said you were trying to build the company towards $100 billion. As we think about that today and the slices of the various...
But I'm sure that when we get there, if we get there, we'll have to change that goal. You don't stop at any particular number.
Well, for today, can you at least reiterate that guidance? And as we think about the slices of the industry that you're planning on taking, what are some of the bigger ones you think are components of that? How big is mobile? How important is it for Google to be almost an advertising mobile OS?
Well, first place, it wasn't guidance, because as you know, we don't give guidance. We talked about it as a potential. How big is the market? And the calculation that we did was that how big is the global advertising market? Somewhere between $750 billion and $1 trillion, whatever. And could Google, by virtue of expanding into many different businesses, get to a number of that sort? And we did the exercise to say, could we? And what would the components be about? There were a number of interesting surprises to that. One, which Sergey has been hammering on very hard, is enterprise. So it turns out that the enterprise market is very, very large. And Google has important offerings, but our enterprise component in revenue is relatively small. So he's been on a huge push about this. Another one is in the display ads category. Another one is in the television ads category. It's not possible from where we are now to know which of these will be bigger than the others. We know that the global ad market is much, much bigger than what you all are defining as the online ads market. So we're now defining ourselves as being in the advertising market so that we can have a larger opportunity. But it's too early to tell which. Mobile ads obviously perform much better than fixed ads in the trials that we've done. But it's a small market today because the true mobile platforms, there are only a few that are available today, have not really been joined by a lot of volume platforms yet, really strong mobile devices. And that's expected over the next year. There's a question in the back. Yes, sir.
Great, thank you. Heath Terry from Credit Suisse. you've obviously got a crowd here that's very familiar with Google, keeps a very close eye on what you're doing, and yet I'm sure we all saw something new today that we had never seen before, either an application or a tool.
You're assuming we didn't?
I was wondering if you could give us an idea of what you plan to do to promote these tools and build user bases for them, and if there's anything specifically about what you've learned with Orchid and what's made it successful in some markets versus others that you'll be able to carry over into building user bases for these new applications.
On the first question, we've realized a while ago that we can't continue to simply add products to our lineup for that very reason that people just won't know about them. They can't keep track of so many things. So we've been shifting more to having universal sort of features available within the products. So for example, you might use the same kind of sharing across your docs and spreadsheets, as well as your Google Talk kind of friends, as well as your 3D models that you've built using SketchUp, things like that. So that's one approach, and it's getting there. I think that we're going to continue to do that. We also want to be careful about not pushing offerings at our users, because then we won't know what sort of the natural uptake and the demand for that particular offering might be. We really want the things that we develop to fend for themselves, at least for a while. And then, once we're convinced of its success, then we can help it out by integrating it more carefully into Google. With respect to Orchid, we actually have had a number of people study this question, both within Google and even social scientists outside of Google. There are a number of hypotheses, but it's and probably some of them are correct. But it's tough to do controlled experiments. You have to, take a country and change its, GDP per capita and this and that and the other. So at this stage, we have some pretty good theories that we're trying to apply, and you'll have to come back visit us in a year or two to see how well they've worked out.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, Jeff Lindsay, Sanford Bernstein. Given Dr. Cerf's earlier comments about the importance of mobile wireless as a platform for Google going forward, how problematical for you is the current locked access policy of the US wireless carriers? And then going forward, is it sufficiently problematical that you would consider actually building out your own spectrum? Thank you.
I would say the fundamental issue is that we just don't have enough innovation in the U.S. market, especially with respect to mobile. And I do think sort of the lockup, the small number of participants, all of these things kind of are tremendous friction on the process. And we feel it ourselves when we develop new applications for the mobile market, and we have to develop them differently for every sort of carrier and strike a separate deal for them, and they all have kind of their own different platforms. It's really slows down the kind of innovation. Now, by comparison, you've seen some pretty good uptake in other. Europe is obviously quite a bit ahead. At the very least, they have all the GSM interoperability. In addition, you typically don't have your phone locked to the network, which also helps. And in Japan, they've had tremendous uptake because they have fantastic devices and really high-quality network services. I think we need to get that to happen in the U.S., and it's not just for Google. It's for many companies out there. It's for the productivity of all of you. We want to do as much as possible to make that happen. But I don't think we're saying that we have to build out our own necessarily. We have many avenues available, and we're gonna see what we can make happen.
More questions?
Great. Colin Gillis, Canaccord. Just with all the talk about user engagement going on, are you thinking about any type of new pricing model beyond the CPM, CPC, sort of a CPM plus? I'm looking at that Nissan ad you showed earlier today.
Mm-hmm. Well, I was going to say, we want to get to the point where people pay for the sale, what's called CPA, because that's by far the best economic deal. Give us your ad, pay us for the ad, we'll guarantee you a sale. We're close to it.
Yeah, and there are different trade-offs. I want to also mention this CPA programs that we have are doing quite well. For some of the larger purchases like a car where the granularity of the purchase might be a little bit too rough, where you actually want to move down the chain and maybe and then display ad, do CPM plus. We've tried a variety of things, and generally speaking, we want to offer the advertisers the flexibility to pay however they want. We then optimize our selection of ads based on which ones will generate the most revenue for the publisher and which ones will be the best experience for the user, the combination of those two factors.
One of the tricks is that we can actually do multiplexing in the back end as well as the front end, and we can actually choose the best ads with the best pricing and the best reach, independent of, for example, the page that they're being shown on. And that's a technology that we've been using pretty successfully in other markets that we should be able to apply pretty much everywhere. Another question. Yes, who has the mic? Yes, sir. Go ahead. Stay there.
To a certain degree, your ability to succeed with Google Apps is going to depend on how capable the web browser becomes as an application deployment platform and how capable JavaScript and other programming languages become. And I'm just wondering if you could project out a few years for us and talk about how limited are you now by those technologies and what sort of stuff you can deploy and how many of those limits will come down over the next 5 years. And to a certain degree, are those technologies you're dependent on just kind of never going to evolve to the point where you'll be able to deploy all the functionality you want? Or do you think over a long time you will be able to?
I'm very optimistic. I didn't used to be. When we first developed Gmail, it was a pretty heavy debate whether it was possible to build email on JavaScript. And the initial experiments actually weren't so great because of the lack of capability in the browsers and because of their lack of stability. We would often crash browsers and things like that. Initially, they had lots of bugs and things like that. But boy, it's been really night and day. And in the years, and that work started well before the launch of Gmail publicly in 2004. But in those few years, the new versions of the browsers, Firefox, IE, as well as Safari, they've made tremendous improvements. So given what they've done so far, now I feel that anything is possible. And furthermore, we've been trying to add to that ourselves with things such as Google Gears, which adds offline capabilities to browser. That's in its earliest stages and has some other functionality as well. It's not just about offline. But we think that more and more will be possible over time.
I think there's a couple reasons to be very optimistic about the answer to your question. One is that there's real competition in browsers now. For a while there wasn't, but now people really do have choices, and all of the people who are offering browsers are aware of what everybody's doing, and they're all being forced by competitive dynamics to add functionality that's really very powerful. And the second is that this sea change from the old model to the new model is so compelling that the users really do speak out, and even more importantly, the developers are speaking out. And when they find limitations, they complain, and they complain quite loudly and bitterly. Because those are the things that are preventing them from building a product which is equal to in one respect, but very different and very much better in another because it's web-based. And the duality of those two, I believe, will really drive this far. There's probably always a limit to where the browser-centric model can go, but we're nowhere near what that limit is. There's so much more that can be done. Some more questions. Yes, sir.
Two quick questions. Brian Pitts from Bank of America. First, on fingerprinting technology, you recently launched a new product. Can you talk about to what extent that's really been an issue for monetization on YouTube? Has that been the barrier, or has the barrier really been the context of the content on that site? And secondly, in terms of speed, we've heard you mention a lot today, and Larry's mentioned a lot before about speed. How important is speed? How much are you investing in speed? As a percentage of your total time and dollars relative to, contextual relevance? Thanks.
Let me answer the fingerprinting question, and Sergey, maybe you can talk about speeds because you've been working hard on that. We have a problem in the world that people are taking unauthorized copies of information and they're uploading them. And that's a violation of law in many countries. It's a violation of the spirit. And it also does hurt the copyright owners who are actually busy building businesses based on this. And so in looking at the various solutions, the only solution that looks to really work is one where we have a copy of the correct product, and then when an illegally copied copy comes over, we match that and say no good and throw it out or do the human review. My feeling is that this is a permanent requirement going forward, because this proliferation of video recording devices of one kind or another, the ability to capture digital copies of everything and move them around, is only going to make the problem worse. So we did the fingerprinting thing because it was the right thing to do, because it's really fundamentally necessary to have a good ecosystem with commercially based, high-quality content in an online experience. And we need that because we need their high-quality content. On speed.
Speed. Speed has been central to everything we've done for since the start of the company, and honestly, pretty much every computer scientist. Efficiency is very important. I think that we continue to work on speed, and especially in the context of, as the previous questioner had asked, the capability of browsers. We really want the browsers to evolve to become faster. And we need to do a lot of special things to tailor our applications, our search, and so forth themselves to be faster within the context of different browsers. Now, mobile presents a much greater challenge because the devices are so slow, they have slow networks, they're not very sophisticated, and they have limited memory in browsers. So as much as Moore's Law continues to help us, as we develop these broader platforms, we have to do new and more clever things to maintain a fast enough experience.
Some more questions, yes. Go ahead.
Thank you. Yusuf Scully at Jefferies. And my question pertains to display advertising. Isn't one of the structural issues with Google as it tries to go after that market is that a lot of it is really branding related, i.e. not as ROI focused as search, which you've obviously perfected. So every time a display ad fights for positioning with a text ad, the text ad will always win. So how do you get over that? And what have you done so far to kind of get over that? Thanks.
The advertisers are very sophisticated on this question, and they produce very detailed plans about how much money they want to spend in branding and how much they want to spend in non-branding type advertising, of which search is always the best choice economically in terms of conversions and so forth. So part of the reason that the display advertising and branding business is so important to us is that our customers actually want a complete solution. They literally want to be able to mix and match. They want to make adjustments based on the metrics and so forth. The specifics with respect to the way we operate, remember, is that we also have the ability to place display ads on other folks' properties through our ad network. So not only can we, as a result of the DoubleClick merger, be able to offer a very, very compelling advertising product, but we can also syndicate it through the network to provide more choices and essentially more reach for the advertisers. Go ahead.
I wanted to ask a question about some of the hiring policies or practices. I guess in the June quarter there was a problem. Was it solved really in the September quarter? And what was the problem? Was it the number of people you were bringing in? Was it the quality of the people? Somehow the quality screen slipped? And just in general, the quality of the applicants that you're seeing now, how would you compare that with what you saw a year or two ago? Is it more competitive? Is the quality rising or falling?
It's curious that the quality improves even as the company becomes larger. I think having to do with the fact that Google is a more established sort of global force in a good way. In the June quarter, you'll remember that part of the issue was actually a bonus accrual issue, and part of it was that we have a hiring cycle which tends to hire a fair number of people related to college. So the quarter that we just announced, we had a similar overhang, or however better you want to talk about it. But we are watching hiring much more carefully. The simplest thing for us to do is to say we want to hire a small number of incredibly talented people because they're in the pipeline. It looks to me like we have time for one more question. Go ahead.
Over here. Eric.
Oh, I'm sorry. Well, then we'll do two. So you'll have the second to last, and he'll have the last. You go ahead.
I just have I think it's a quick question. Is it possible for a company like yourself with a monetization engine to develop expertise in certain content verticals, either certain kinds of traffic or for certain advertisers that's superior to others, whether it's you guys or anybody else? Is that possible, or is it really broad spectrum monetization platforms rule the day?
Yeah, if I may, I feel we already have such expertise. In fact, we organized our sales force a while ago along certain kinds of verticals. So in fact, when you talk to a customer support person or a salesperson within Google for, you're a certain, your airline or, your healthcare company or whatnot, you'll talk to somebody who has lots of expertise in that particular field and within, how the kind of targeted search or ad set style advertising, how that best works within your field. So I feel like we've already have that expertise. Now, we don't run different algorithms for the different kinds of verticals, but nevertheless, the kinds of functionality that we develop, we have these verticals in mind, and the individual people we have working on those accounts have tremendous expertise in those verticals.
And you have the honor of the last question.
Thank you. It's Neil Shelton from Credit Suisse. In Europe, you enjoy some enormous market shares of online search and some very high revenues relative to the overall advertising markets. Why does Europe differ to the US in terms of your ability to succeed there? And secondly, you have a fabulous ability to look at short-term advertising trends. As you move into 2008, are you more bullish or bearish on the 2008 advertising cycle?
Again, we wouldn't be able to give you any kind of forward commitment, although the world is a big place, and Europe is doing very well for us, as you know from our current reports. We enjoy very good market share in Europe, and there are many reasons, I think, why. Perhaps the most important was that we localized and produced a product of high quality in the language in the per language way. And one of the things that I'm proudest of is that Google has spent a lot of time in the last year trying to get to 99% of all the languages that are used on the internet today. We don't have all 200 or 300 or 400 languages, but we're on our way. And so our focus on globalization benefits us in many ways. Higher market share than our competitors because our products are better. And of course, also, we get the benefit of the stronger advertising in the local market as a result. So it's really a combination of all of that, I think. I wanted to say thank you all. We throw a lot of stuff at you all. I know it's hard to, there's so much coming out of Google every day now, which we're obviously very excited about. So we're happy that you spent so much time with us. George?
I have nothing to say other than I really have enjoyed working with Eric and Sergey and Larry, wherever he is today. And I am committed to seeing through the hiring of our new CFO when that happens. So,
thank you, George. Thank you,
You're
Sergey,
welcome.
and thank you all.